Arab American Institute. Celebrations there on the streets of Gaza. Clearly big issues are still yet to be determined. What's your initial reaction?
Certainly relief. This is a desperately needed ceasefire after 2 years of an absolutely brutal and sadistic genocide that has been imposed on Palestinians in Gaza that has broken many records. The record for how many journalists can be killed in a so-called conflict, the record for how many children are killed, how many UN workers, how many medics. This has been an absolute horror show. And so the fact that this is now, at least for the time being, has been put on, has been brought to a halt is certainly a very, very welcome decision. But to your point, it is only phase one of an agreement that talks about the exchange of captives and the fact that this killing has been put to a stop in the meantime. We don't know, given the fact that Netanyahu, for many previous ceasefires, has broken them relentlessly. Even currently in Lebanon, Israel is waging a one-sided war on Lebanon in violation of that ceasefire. So we don't know whether Netanyahu is at some point going to find an excuse to renew the killing in Gaza. And even if that does not happen, another big question is the question of whether Gaza is going to be allowed to be rebuilt. Because there's a deep concern here that if Israel has spent 2 years destroying Gaza as a part of an effort to push the population out, they might want to deliberately leave Gaza in ruins, never to be rebuilt, as part of amplifying that pressure to push the Palestinian population out. So many, many unanswered questions and a lot of risks looking forward. But in the meantime, certainly any stop to the killing is a welcome development.
The United States has clearly applied some pressure on Israel to get it to come to this point in the negotiations. How confident are you that Donald Trump will continue to do that on Benjamin Netanyahu to reach agreement on those other thornier issues?
There is no question that this would not have been possible without Donald Trump pressuring Netanyahu. The problem is that Donald Trump is extremely interested in only himself and his narrow, short-term self-interests. So as long as he considers that to be a priority for him, I think we can expect that pressure to continue. But things could change at any moment. There could be any domestic scandal that breaks out in the United States. There could be a shift of focus. And once that happens, it is completely unpredictable. You can never count on Donald Trump having the patience and the long-term interest in any particular issue to continue to see it all the way through to its end. We've seen him broker a ceasefire when he first came into office for Gaza, and then after a few weeks kind of gave up on it and allowed Israel to break it and move on. So Trump, if anything, he's certainly unpredictable, and that makes it very difficult to assess to what extent he's going to be invested in maintaining that pressure to prevent a return to the killing.
Well, he talks about this as the first step towards a strong, durable and everlasting peace. I mean, we know he is prone to hyperbole, but do you think he fully grasps the detail in this? We understand he's not a details president, but do you think he fully understands how difficult that will be to achieve?
Yeah, and in the short term, he understood he could bully Netanyahu a little bit and try to get some sort of short-term agreement at least sorted out. The problem, of course, is that no matter what happens here, nothing is going to solve this issue long-term until Palestinians are afforded their right to self-determination as a free people in their land. And right now, that is completely out of the question for Netanyahu. He's made it clear multiple times that Israel is going to maintain control over Palestinians between the river and the sea indefinitely, that there is no prospect for a Palestinian state. And as long as that is the situation that we're in, where Palestinians cannot be a free people and cannot exercise their rights without living under the boot of Israeli occupation, there's not going to be a long-term solution to this. And that is the question of whether Trump is going to deal with that broader issue. He doesn't seem so far to be the kind of president who's capable of doing that. He has deferred to Israel time and again. He has given legitimacy to illegal Israeli settlements. He has used the American veto power at the UN to shield Israel from any accountability or UN action. And when you have that kind of track record, and a track record of someone who has essentially bowed to the Israel lobby over and over again in Washington, I think there's no confidence that Trump is going to be the guy who can solve this long term. But again, in the meantime, we'll see if he actually can just muster at least a long enough pause to the killing that the people of Gaza can have a moment to breathe after this onslaught for 2 years.
Yeah, and Donald Trump's even talked about, well, he's planning to go to the Middle East. We understand, of course, he wants to be there if indeed this deal is ratified and it goes further. He's also talked about possibly visiting Gaza as well, although that does appear unlikely at the moment. I mean, how quickly do you think this is going to gather pace? Clearly, we know that hostages and prisoners may be released within 72 hours of this being signed, which we think will happen in the coming day. But do you think we can expect progress on any of the other issues?
It's, again, when you look at the long-term issues that are currently stuck, it is very difficult to imagine that Trump is going to be able to move any of them. Now, he is very invested in the idea of getting the Nobel Peace Prize. So you've got that potentially going in his direction, whether that might mean real and meaningful pressure on Israel, because we have to remember that this has been the only sticking point. I mean, when Trump talks about halting however many wars, I can't keep track of how many he's claiming he put a stop to, the Iran-Israel war that he bragged about putting an end to was one that he himself started. He had given Israel the green light to attack Iran. So then to turn around and brag about the fact that you've stopped that war is going to be a difficult sell for anybody to take you seriously as a peacemaker when you stop a war that you've initiated. And we frankly have a dynamic here that isn't fundamentally different. It's been quite clear the fact that the fundamental problem exists between Palestine and Israel is because Palestinians are not a free people. And there's not been a single word from Donald Trump about challenging that core dynamic in which Israel dominates and rules over Palestinians. Not a single word about that. And that you cannot take anything seriously, any possibility for meaningful progress when you're not dealing with that central issue. And you have, frankly, a regional dynamic that is also quite explosive. We don't know whether the ongoing Israeli attacks on Lebanon are going to escalate into a major war at some point. Syria is still unsettled. The question with Iran remains unsettled. You have a lot of fluidity and a lot of, frankly, a radioactive dynamic that could explode at any moment. And it is difficult to imagine what real, meaningful, positive shift can come from Trump visiting Gaza. But again, he is someone who wants to make a splash and somebody who wants to kind of break records and make history. He has that going for him, but I find it very difficult to imagine that he fully understands what it means, the level of confrontation with Israel it's going to take to really achieve meaningful, long-lasting peace that is based on justice in the Middle East. I doubt there has been no signs that he's willing to go that far in a confrontation with the Israeli government. And if we ever see signs of that, that will be the first sign of something potentially better coming through.
Well, he certainly made a splash today, Omar, despite the challenges that lie ahead.